the J&J podcast. I'm Jeff Day.
John Fulford.
Yes, veteran missionaries. Or you're a current missionary, right, John?
Yes, sir. 8 years full-time and going back and forth for the last 4 years. Malawi, Africa.
I'm Jeff Day. 8 years in the little village of Kaltag in Alaska, located on the Yukon River. We are coming to you from the heart of Alaska at the In-True Studio in Fairbanks. It's a privilege to be here this evening with the Scholl family, and I have Carol and Chris with me this evening, veteran missionaries to Greenland, not the Iceland, the Greenland. Amen.
That's
Thank
right.
you. So, Mr. Scholl, that's been a debate here on how the proper pronunciation of the last name. So I'll put that one right out there. So if you hear it coming out a couple of different ways, this podcast, it's not my fault. We're going to call it the Scholl family. They've been, brother, how long have you been in Greenland?
We've been in Greenland for 16 years, and we also spent 2 years previously in Iceland.
Iceland, and then Greenland. Wow, amen. Well, I'll tell you what, we start this out here. Can you just briefly introduce yourself and we have the privilege of having your wife here with us this evening. If you can introduce her and just give us a synopsis of who you are, where you're at, and how long you've been there, and what you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm Christopher Scholl, and this is my wife, Carol Ann Scholl, and we got married in 2000 and took our honeymoon to Greenland because we knew God called us there. And we got to the field of Iceland in 2005 because we couldn't get into Greenland. But God did a miracle, opened the door for us to get into Greenland in 2007. And we've been there ever since. And we've just been busy learning the languages, starting a church, getting involved in just about any ministry we can find there in Greenland.
Now, hang on. You just rolled that right off your tongue. Now, I had the privilege of watching some of your presentation and everything for over the last week here at Bible Baptist Church, and you just can't roll it like that because you said you went to the field in what year?
2005.
2005. You say you've been working on the language ever since, and just it just happened to be there. It's 2005. You do realize how long ago that was?
It was a few years ago.
So you've been on the field for how many years?
For 18 years.
Oh, hang on. Before we run away with this thing, your wife is here with us. Thank you for being with us here this evening. How many kids do you have?
We have 5. Our oldest has just turned 22, and our youngest is 12, 20, 17.
So I'm trying to do the math here quick. Kids that you had when you went to the field?
We had two our oldest son and daughter, and then we had 3 on the mission field.
Is this like let me ask her. She knows all these things. How many?
We had 2 when we went to the field, and 3 were born. 1 in Iceland and 2 in Greenland.
1 in Iceland and 2 in Greenland. You had 3 kids on the field.
Yes.
You've been there since 2007. You went with 2 kids. Now, I go over that for a reason, because there's a lot of people out there that are listening to this podcast, young couples, and the big thing is, kids on the field, having children in the field, in a foreign field, and like that, and they're nervous. Reason to be nervous?
Yes.
That's not what we're supposed to say. Well, J&J podcast, what we try to do is make it real. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there's young couples or couples going to the field with children, and it's challenging in many different ways. And you had 2. How old was your oldest again? When you went to the field?
He was 3, and he turned 4 about 6 weeks later, I think. Yeah,
wow.
almost 4.
So it was 4. You took a 4-year-old to the foreign field. I see. So you had to deal with having children on the field. But your oldest one now, is he working there with you guys in the ministry?
He is, and he's teaching full-time in the public school there in our town.
Well, I mean, I'll just to add a little bit to that. It obviously is a big deal having children. I mean, for the wife, I mean, it was hard for her going to a foreign place. Sometimes couldn't understand the language real well with the midwives, and it was really scary. It didn't get easier with each child.
Really, it didn't get any easier.
No, I don't. I mean, she can tell you. But
Any horror stories, though? I'm blatant. I come out and ask that. Any horror stories having children, as far as things that go wrong or anything like that you were scared, challenged with?
Actually, our last child, when we were in Iceland, we became friends with another missionary family, and she had retired from the Navy as a Navy nurse. And when I was due with our fifth child, I had to go to Nuuk, the capital city, 400 miles south of us, and he couldn't go with me. So she came over to be with me there. And she befriended several of the doctors. They were fascinated with her, and because she was also in the medical profession. But the midwives didn't care much for her. But I was having problems that I didn't even realize how serious they were. And she did, and she actually called her husband, and she wasn't sure if she told her husband, I don't think both of them are going home. One of them's not going to make it either. Wow. So I didn't know any of that till afterwards, but God used her to talk to the doctors, and once the doctors realized what was going on, they induced me, and our baby was born, and
everything turned out okay.
Everything was fine.
God worked all things together for good.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The reason I pushed that and asked that question is because in the midst of everything on the foreign field, in the middle of everything, and God's in the middle of it.
He is.
And that was what I got out of your testimonies and from some of your preaching and sharing your whole, trying to share your whole story of being on the field in there, is that God's there. God takes care of those things. God's in the middle of it. It's hard because he definitely makes you try to trust in him. It makes you lean on him, and it's been good. But you got 5 beautiful children now that are just, and you've got somebody. You have your oldest one working with you in the field. That is like awesome.
Yeah.
That is like awesome. And that's a blessing. So you've been there how many years?
16 years in Greenland.
So in 16 years, when we say Greenland, how many missionaries in Greenland?
Now there is another missionary family that just arrived in April.
We're talking an entire country, and there's one other missionary in there. How many were there when you showed up?
There were none.
You had nothing, nobody there. I heard some of your story on how God opened the door, because that's a closed country. And people don't realize that. And it's a closed country. But I heard the story on how God allowed you to get in there. How about just a brief one on that one?
So we went to Iceland. We lived there for 7 years. We could get our Icelandic citizenship. And with that, we could go right into Greenland without dealing with immigration. But when we got to Iceland, God had other plans. There was a U.S. military base there and a church, Baptist church, to the military. And through that church, we met a lady that worked for the U.S. base as a liaison to the NATO forces. And the commander of the NATO forces was a Dane, a man from Denmark. And of course, Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. And she told him all about us. And he said he owned houses in Greenland. And he told her to put his name on our application and to send it back in. And that's what we did. And it took about a year before we actually got the yes, but it was through that man that we got into Greenland.
But you were planning on being there for how long?
A minimum 7 years.
You were going to go. You were going to Iceland for 7 years in order to take a step into Greenland, knowing Greenland is where you were supposed to be all the time.
Yeah, that's correct. We had a plan. We thought we could make trips to Greenland once we were living in Iceland. But of course, once we started looking at the prices, it was going to be something that we wouldn't be able to do that often.
Allow me to ask this question. You were called to Greenland. God opened your eyes, or God, however that story goes, you're supposed to go to Greenland. And that was your main focus in life, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you, if I remember from what you shared with us out of the pulpit, you were looking for a wife, and you were going to take her to Greenland.
That's correct. God called me at the age of 19. I knew I was going to Greenland.
At the age of 19, that's kind of where I was. Where I want to go is you were 19 years old. God showed you Greenland's where I want you to go.
That's right. At the time, I didn't know it was God, but Greenland came to my heart. And I was like, does anyone even live there? So I just started researching it, and I just kept praying. And it was, months before God gave me the peace that it was Greenland.
So God gave you the peace. You know it's Greenland. did you know it would be your entire life up to this point?
No.
Sincerity.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of guys out there like, I'm called, but really? My whole life?
To be honest with you, my wife can testify. I was afraid that I would never make it. I was young. I saw so many missionaries that quit, didn't make it. And I just had this fear. Are we all actually going to get there? So when we had to go to Iceland, it was just, the back of my mind, are we ever going to get there? But I knew God called us. So I was just going once, through that next door, and we're just going to keep our eyes on Greenland.
Trying to put myself in the shoes of other missionaries that are called to the field. And we hear some of those missionaries that spend their entire life, the veterans that have been there for their entire lives. And my question's always been, did you know that from the beginning? And I don't know if that's safe to say. I don't know in my mind, we're going to Greenland, and we didn't know how long it would be, but at the same time, I thought by now we might already have a church established, be going on to the next village. So it's definitely taking longer than we expected. So the longer I'm there, the more I realize this is going to be probably our entire lives. You ready for that, Carol? I shouldn't pry like that, but it will. Because it's interesting because I try to keep myself out of these as much as possible. I served 8 years in Village Caltech here in Alaska. I surrendered. I remember when I was with God, I surrendered to be a missionary in Alaska. And then I wind up in the villages of Alaska, and God is blessed. But then he brought me out after 8 years, and I struggled for several years. Just what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And it was, what brought me out of there in the first place. What brought me out of there was it was just time. God put it, put on my heart to leave, and circumstances followed, and it's like, wow, I'm off the field. And I have that ministry is never over. I just left, I have a business here in Alaska, and I just left an employee that was in Caltech, an employee of mine who grew up in Caltech, knew me, actually two of them that are currently working for me. And it goes on because I work within their lives now, and I'm more effective now in their lives than I ever could have been then. And like it, love it, lump it, argue it all you want. But the truth of the matter is, it's not over. Mm-hmm. It's never over. It's never over. And God's just working in different ways. I'm more effective in a whole lot of areas than I would have ever thought. It never works out the way you think. But right. Somehow it works out. Amen. And it's like, wow. But that's my road. And, every one of us has a different one that we have to travel on and stuff. But the common thread is Jesus. That's the common thread. What does it take for him to be lifted up? And so in the years that you've been there, tell me a little bit about Greenland. Alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol is the number one problem. You take out alcohol, the country would turn around quickly. As far as the social problems in the homes, it's really bad.
I jump on that because it's little towns, right? How many people in?
Our town's a bigger one, 5,000 people. But like I said, ours is the biggest. There's a lot of other towns that are much smaller than that, just a few hundred, even some that only have 50 people.
So Greenland itself, though, I don't know. The hardest challenge for me was trying to show people, what a village in Alaska looks like. And you say 5,000 people, so that's a small town, but you can't compare that to the U.S. because it's a different world.
Yeah. And to explain our town's not spread out. Our town, it's like a city. Everybody's on top of each other. There's apartments. Right. There's no private property. Everybody's just crowded. So we're really, really crowded in this little tiny area.
So when you went there, when you got the doors open in Greenland, you go to Greenland, you get in there. Do you know the language?
No, I just knew a little bit of the Danish language, which is the second language in Greenland, but I didn't know the native Greenlandic language at all.
Who was waiting for you at the airport?
No one.
You went there not knowing anybody, not knowing the language.
Now we had reserved a hotel, so they were supposed to pick me up, but they forgot.
They forgot to pick you up. You know, you say that, and when I went to Caltag, there was no place. I had gone in there in a small plane, found a place I through contacts, I finally found a person, and they had a house that was I heard you describe some of your stuff. This room that we're doing the podcast in was probably half the size of the house. The next room out, you put these two rooms together here, and that's the house. And my wife and two boys, and there we are. You get in there, I mean, it's lonely. Mm-hmm. It is lonely. And I can't imagine if there was a big language barrier. It gets lonely. But the same thing. I fly in there, and there's times I'd fly in there, and the agent will forget to pick you up. And you're standing out there at the airport, and there's no place to go into it. And it's 10, 20 below zero. And next thing you know, the plane fires up, and he says, "See ya." And away he goes. And you're like, really? But it's about a mile walk. And yeah, so I know it can be. It can be lonely. It can be lonely. So nobody's there, but you found a place.
Yeah, well, I had gone there like a month before and tried to arrange something.
Survey.
I went by myself, and I had a guy that was going to rent a house to us. But when we got there, the house wasn't ready, and so we were living in this hotel for several days. And I finally told him, I was like, I can't afford to live in this hotel. I'm running out of money. So then he had a little guest house, like. A guest house is not the right word in English. It's like just a little, like 200 square foot, maybe, like for tourists. And so he told us we could live there until the house was ready. So that was the start of everything. Our daughter, Anna, just a little. How old is Anna? 4 years old, and we would be praying every night. The guy would. Get us into that house, but there was no water. So the guy was working on the water to get the water working, and Anna's praying that water will come out of the faucet, our little daughter, out of the mouth of babes.
Your wife's just sitting next to you with a smile on her face. Like, yeah, we say something stupid like, "Those were the days." Somehow they word it a little different. Challenging stuff, Carol.
That was very challenging because, I was expecting our fourth child, and we had 3 small children. And
in a little 200 square foot.
And then on top of that, we had a 20-foot container that we shipped from Greenland. From Iceland, sorry. And we didn't have a place to store any of that. So it arrives, and of course the container is owned by the shipping company, so they're charging us $50 a day rent.
Storage.
So we had to get that stuff out of that 20-foot container. Didn't know anyone. But I was able to rent. My landlord owned everything in town, so he actually owned containers. So we were able to rent a container from him for like $100 a month. So, but we had to move everything out. So it was just Carol and I. We knew no one in town. So she's 8 months pregnant. We actually had a piano that weighed 400 pounds, and we had to move. So I built up some platform, and we rolled that piano in from the one container into the other. It was just crazy. The little kids were sitting there in the snow. We gave them juice boxes and candy just to keep them happy.
Oh, so you you got a place, and then what do you do for church now?
Well,
from that day.
Oh, from that day one?
Yeah.
Well, it was just our family, of course. We had some revivals, though. We were weeping, singing these songs. I got a mansion over the over the hilltop. Sorry,
just not now.
Yeah. And we would just cry a lot, and then, but slowly when we got into that apartment I was telling you about on Sunday. Then we were there for a while. So we knew, okay, now it's the time to try to get people to come out. And then there were some children outside always playing from the children's home. So we just started inviting them in. And that's how it started. We were just speaking a little bit of Danish, a little bit of English, a little bit of Greenlandic.
But those kids, it's always with the kids. Yeah. That's what my greatest success was with the kids. And we discount that in fundamental realms. As well, we discount the fact that these ministries start with the kid. You have to raise them up.
And those kids, they remember what you do for them.
Everything. I've got one of the individuals that's working with today was young child when he was out there, and they remember, led him to the Lord, and he's had his struggles just like the rest of us, but he's still standing. But it all stems from the fact that it was reaching out to the younger kids.
Yes.
You start with those younger kids because, if you're there for the long haul, or the next guy comes along, you're laying a foundation that
Exactly.
it has to be. If not, he's got to start with the kids. He got to start over. Well, amen. So you have a facility now?
Yeah, now we have a 2,000 square foot building, which is really nice. It's just a miracle to have that in the Arctic. But yeah, it feels like church now. People can come and sit down, not on a couch.
What was it? Yeah, right. Get
I like that
house.
better, but
I know exactly what you mean. It's like I built a church house out in Caltech. I was there. They were coming to my little house every. I had regular meetings services there, and I think I was there 2 years, and finally it's like we're gonna build something. And it was this whole saga by itself, but I built a 2-story log home, and we lived up top, and the church is down below. And it's like finally it's like, get out of my living room. I want my own space. Go away. And people don't understand. I appreciate it. I know exactly what you mean. So you had 2,000 square foot.
And we actually, when we first got the building, we lived in half of it, and there was a door.
Yeah,
there was a door in the middle we locked when church started.
So that 2,000 square foot, what was it previously?
It was owned by an insurance company in town. And so they were just using the one part of the building. The other part was just sat empty for years. The house part sat empty for years.
Wow. And for me, I'm loving this because I know exactly what you're up against. It just takes time.
Yes,
it takes time. And the amazing part is you beat your head against the wall for so long that all of a sudden God moves in somebody's heart. It's like, wow. And it's only a miracle that God is real. Look at that.
There was a time that we were walking around town before we had that building and thinking we're never going to be able to afford a building. There's nothing even available. And the price of just renting a little room in town is like $3,000 and some American dollars.
Come on.
And I was like, that's never going to happen. And then God.
Ding. The door opens and away you go. Oh, man. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, well, this ministry is going to be over quick. This will never happen. There's just no way. God can't afford this. And it's like, oh, I guess he's serious. Sorry. Okay, let me shift and go back here for a second. What does it take to go to Greenland?
Well, you mean as far
monthly?
As monthly?
Let's go monthly.
Well,
just put it on the street, man. Everybody's wondering.
Well, I hope my family doesn't hear this. They're like, "Whoa, how much money does he have?"
Right?
It's expensive. Of course, it's the Arctic, number one, and then of course there's a high tax that we pay in Greenland. But I tell new missionaries 6,000, between 6,000 and 6,500.
Wow.
It sounds like a lot of money, but in Greenland, it's not a lot of money.
Vaporizes in a heartbeat.
Yeah, quickly. And then, of course, like coming back to America, when you have to somehow try to budget that in because it's not cheap. So you get a little bit of money in your savings, and then it's all gone when you visit the States.
If it's 6,065, obviously you went many years ago.
Well, I started out. I didn't know how much to raise because we just didn't know what it would cost. We went to the field, we visited, tried to figure out, but we didn't know. So I started out like 5,000 a month. And then it was hard for me to get meetings because nobody knew my college, nobody knew my church, nobody knew my mission board. So
hang on a second. Let's see. You're traveling around fundamental churches and you were of the wrong stripe. You didn't have the right. So we pick on a whole lot of churches here because it's, I come out of the realms there where, if you said Bob Jones, you'd be shot because you had to be Hiles. And if you're Hiles, you better look out because Ruckman's right around the corner. It's like, really, guys? And so, what college did you go to?
It was called the Maryland Baptist Bible College in Elkton, Maryland.
Okay.
Part of a local church. It was just a small college, small local church college, just a few people that lived on campus, and then most commuted.
You, of all people, can lay that out and not be ashamed of it, because any veteran missionary has been on the field for how many years?
16 or 18.
And how many other missionaries in there?
Just one other.
And who was there when you got there?
No one.
You have nothing to hold back on, man. You've earned the right. You can put it. You can say whatever you want. Nobody can discount you in any way, shape, or form. Both of you. And so you went to a hole in the wall, backdoor Bible college. Mm-hmm. Why did you feel you had to go to Bible college?
It just actually, I didn't know about missions or anything at the time when I was out of high school, and I thought, well, I might as well go to Bible college. I was going to try to do something else, but I thought I wasn't really sure, so I'll just go to Bible college, and 1 year of that won't hurt me. Well, 1 year turned into 4 years.
You got 4 years. So 4 years of college. What was your church again? Your sending church? I'm sorry.
The sending church is in Delaware, Pleasantville Baptist Church, which is it's a long story, but it changed names, but same people, and changed locations, but same people.
Wow. Your pastor is
Caleb Norris. He's just been there maybe 7 years now. My former pastor, the one that kind of my mentor, the one that, I was called to preach under, he died of cancer back in 2016.
Did you get saved under that preacher?
I was saved before we moved there. Let me start over.
No,
I was saved at the age of 7 when we were living in Philadelphia, and then my parents moved to Maryland when I was 11 years old, and we were right on the border of Maryland and Delaware, and our church is in Delaware.
Now, your father was a preacher?
My dad, he's still pastoring today.
Oh, wow.
And I got saved at the age of 10, the young girl. My mom's parents weren't saved, and we prayed every day for them to get saved. And one day as we were praying for them, I realized I wasn't saved.
No, hang on. Say that again. One day while you were praying for somebody to get saved, you realized you weren't saved.
I did, yes.
Were you praying with were you praying with somebody? Were they directing you to pray? If you're 10.
It was actually at a revival meeting, and I think I was praying with my family for my grandparents, because the message was, really touched our hearts to pray more for my grandparents. And as I was praying for their salvation, I realized.
I'm not. Wow. And I say that because you keep your kids around going to church, and you show them the power and the importance of prayer, and God works through that stuff. Mm-hmm. So God's answering prayer. He answered that one big time. Amen. That's a blessing. Thank you for sharing that. So back to this $6,500 a month. That's a lot of coin.
Yes.
That's a lot of. So you were on deputation for how long?
About 2.5 years. And we just couldn't get enough meetings. I mean, we had like 100 meetings in 2.5, 3 years. And most missionaries are having 80 meetings a year. I had 100 over 3 years. So we decided, we were just going to go. Whatever money came in, we were going to go. And that's what happened. We just went to the field.
Well, you were going to Iceland to start with.
Yes.
Did you think resistance from preachers saying, well, if he's going to go to Iceland, he ain't never going to make it to Greenland?
There were just a few people like that. Didn't maybe not said it to me, but we
verbalized it.
We heard later that some were wondering, hey, these people are pretty young. Are they going to even make it to the field? Our mission director told us that years later that there were people asking.
So you out of a board?
It's called All Points Baptist Mission.
Yep.
A local church ministry.
I'm actually familiar.
Okay, it used to be Points North. That's how it started out.
Yep.
And that's that was of course my draw was it's Points North. It's to the Arctic. The mission director Gary Forney, he's dead now, but he spent over 40 years in the Arctic of Canada. He had a big part in that ministry in Nunavik, where Brother Donnelly was for years.
He's one of my heroes. The guy is awesome. Who else was out of that mission board?
Did you have?
Isn't O'Brien out of that one?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I thought. John O'Brien's out of that mission. That's why it rang with Brother Donnelly out of that mission board. He's the man up there.
He sure is.
Nunavik, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. He'd come down here and he would work with, but yeah, he would come down there for years and do that teen camp. Oh, talk about the stories there. And I'll tell you what, that helped Brother Donnelly out, I'm sure, because those teens would surrender, and they'd have Village Week. So they bring a lot of Alaska Natives and stuff into the camp, Brother Ojala's camp, and Brother Donnelly would be preaching to him. Oh, wow. Then, of course, church team, they'd have church week. So the mission board, is still active.
Yes.
And when you went to the field, what did you have?
I'm around 4,500 a month promised.
You had 4,500. You were shooting for $5,000, but it was. Hang on now. You don't have to run those numbers like that with me. We promised 4,500. There's only $1,200 coming in, but we're promised 4,500. Is that
the good thing is, of course, if you were listening on Sunday or when I gave the testimonies, we had a big tax problem years later, so it was good that our support was really low. Or we would have had a really big tax problem.
Nice. So, but you were $4,500 a month when you went.
Yeah.
In that 2000, what did we say,
2005 to Iceland.
5 to Iceland, $4,500 a month, and that was a fair chunk of coin back then.
Yes, in America, it was a really nice chunk of coin. Actually, I'd had people say, "What? You're raising that much money? I should be a missionary." So it got me ooh, just in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, So that's why I kind of thought, well, I'm just going to go. I'll listen to this guy. I'll just go with this guy. Said it's too much money.
Honest, dear, it's enough. Yeah. No, that's usually the thermometer right there. It's like, we can do this. Define we. So you go to the mission field. You got 4,500 promised. What was really coming in?
It would fluctuate between 4 and sometimes it actually would get close to 5.
Close to 5.
Yeah.
So you had a promise and you felt. Now let me back up, because you said you only had 100 meetings over 3 years.
Yeah.
And you were able. That's success right there.
That was, yeah. I mean, I talked to other missionaries and they were saying you need at least 400 meetings to get to the field.
Right. Who are you listening to? Were you listening to missionaries?
Yes.
I have trucking business, and the one thing you don't do is listen to truck drivers. Don't ever listen to truck drivers. The same thing with missionaries. Don't ever listen to a missionary, other than on the podcast. Right. See, you thought I was going to mess it up again, huh? And I asked that question because there's a lot of guys out there that are just chomping at the bit to go, yeah, that's enough. I can do this. Yeah, that's enough. I can do that. And I'm not arguing that. But the 3 years, having to go through 3 years and looking at, oh man, I can't get enough meetings. Do you see why God kept you there for 3 years?
Yes. I mean, it was a learning time, definitely.
For both of you?
Yes.
Yeah. Children while you were traveling around?
Yeah.
Well, back then, everybody, every pastor wanted to tell us how to raise our 2 little babies. So that was interesting.
Hang on. Let me walk into that one instead of just dropping a bomb like that. Let me say, so when you were traveling around on deputation and you've got 2 kids with you at that time and 2 years old?
Yeah, well, our daughter was born.
I'm trying to do the math here.
Yes, we had
your daughter was born on deputation. Oh, we're going there. Yeah. There's a whole lot of young ladies out there. I mean, we're going there. So you had a 2-year-old. Your daughter was born also while you were on deputation. You run into any kind of troubles when you go into churches?
Well, just to back up with her having our daughter while on deputation, I didn't do everything the way I think you're supposed to do it as a loving husband. I didn't like to go to I didn't want to go to a meeting by myself. I mean, I just wanted to be with my wife. So I dragged her along. And how old was our daughter when you were going back to meetings?
2 weeks.
We traveled a 20-hour trip, and our daughter was 2 weeks old.
She looks at it now like, that ain't happened. Or wouldn't have happened. Boy, I thank you for sharing that with us, too, because that's what I'm trying to find out. So you got the young children. You're going to the church. I can remember some horror stories with, I mean, if they're functioning human beings, they're fine. But if they're young infants, you're in trouble. Yeah. I mean, the churches just don't reach out to you. And I think a lot of times, a lot of that is because of, it's Wednesday night, it's our missions program, and the average age of the people sitting in the pews over 50. I went there. I did it. Yeah, I said that. And they don't want a whole bunch of kids disrupting it, when in fact Christianity's future is right there in front of it. It's like, guys, what do you you think it's going to die with you? And it's like these young kids are coming through, these younger adults are coming through, and they are seriously trying to do something for God. And so that being said, you had preachers that.
Well, of course, we're driving to meetings 6 hours at one time, and the kids are sitting in the car for 6 hours, and you get out, and the kids don't want to sit for another 2 hours in church. So sometimes the kids would make a little noise, and then we had a few people want to tell us how to raise the kids.
Oh, really?
And of course, the Carol, she can talk about how different from one church to the next. There were different expectations.
Yeah, come on. Can you please go ahead?
Some churches wanted your kids in the nursery. They had a baby nursery, a 2-year-old nursery, 3-year-old nursery. So put the kids in the nursery, and that was great. In the next church, they didn't believe in kids being in a nursery. But when your kids aren't used to sitting in church all the time, it's a struggle. So I spent a lot of services in the vestibule holding 2 kids or one and keeping the other one entertained and trying to get them to sit in church. And, yeah.
There has to be those churches that stood out, that were really went over the top. What did you find that was really helpful as you were traveling around with younger kids?
Oh, the churches that, for the most part, we have wonderful churches, and they just, welcomed
that's a
us.
patented answer.
No, I'm serious. We have a few horror stories.
You guys are veteran missionaries. Come on.
But,
you got nothing to lose but a little support. No. We're trying to help these younger kids going out there.
Even now, when we go to churches and they know our kids' names, and you can tell they read our prayer letters.
Come on.
That's huge. And Bible Baptist is right at the top of the list. They, we can tell you all read our prayer letters, our kids' names, and, and it's great. And that was the thing on deputation. A lot of churches were new, but, when they would take the time to get to know me and the kids.
Right.
And realize that we're a package deal. He's the missionary, he's the preacher, but we're going with him.
I think you summed it up there. It's a package deal. And the churches you could see the churches that were making an attempt to get to know you and get to feel this whole thing out, to see what the deal was. And it just, in all sincerity, a lot of those churches are looking to see if it's real. Mm-hmm. If it's real, we get a lot of missionaries through here, are you guys really sincere and serious about going to the field? Yes. It's really that blatant. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of them don't know you from Adam. And you go in there as a couple, and they can see you guys as a couple. We've been on deputation for X. We're at X amount of level. And we use that as a church. We use that as a barometer to say, okay, you have how much support, how long you've been traveling around. And I don't think that's necessarily accurate, but we do it. And then we look and see how their children are. And I don't know if I was on deputation back there in the 90s. And sure enough, man, if you do this, and you better have your I's dotted and your T's crossed. And if you're going to be like that, I can understand that. And they say, well, if your family's not in order, then, how do you expect to do what you're supposed to do on the field? Well, you just got a snapshot of how many hours in the car, and it's like, good. You show me how it's done, hero. It's definitely. But the churches that sit there and try to get part of your life, and that's the other thing we try to do on the podcast, is try to share. Guys, don't miss the fact that this is a veteran missionaries that have been on the field for 16 years.
16 years in Greenland, 18 altogether.
18 years altogether. And God definitely has put them there. You can see that. And getting to know them as a family, and seeing and hearing from them with their prayer letter and making it part of your life would be extremely beneficial, especially if you're a young couple trying to make it to the field or attempting to go there, surrendering to do what God would have you to do. And if you want to see how it's done, and from the ground up, I would encourage you to get a hold of these guys. And so if some young lady has a question, she can get a hold of you. Are you willing?
Yes, I have email.
Okay, some more vintage individual has. I got to be diplomatic here, okay. But you do have an email?
I do.
Okay,
yes.
Can you share that with us?
It's Carol, Carole, Shull, SHULL, @gmail.com.
See, there's no O in there. Shoal. She says a shawl, and he says shoal. The problem's with them.
Yeah. I'm still learning how to pronounce it, I guess.
Oh, another 30 years again. Brother Chris, I asked this one. Is it okay for missionaries to reach out to you or individuals to reach out to you?
Definitely.
How would they reach you?
Either Facebook or email.
You have a Facebook page?
Yes. We actually, it's called the Shoal Family.
The Shull family in Greenland.
Shoal Family in Greenland.
Spell that.
SHULL
Right.
Family in Greenland.
In Greenland.
It's a ministry page.
It is a ministry page. And they can message you through there and contact you
Yes.
with that. Thank you for sharing that information. How many people you got coming to church?
Well, now, when we get back, usually between 5 and 15 natives. I mean, we've had times where there's been in the 20s, times when it's only been one.
When you say native,
The native people are the Greenlanders or the Inuit, formerly known as Eskimos.
why don't we call them Eskimos anymore?
It's no longer politically correct.
I've got the same problem that I'm having here. I've got everything on the coast of Alaska is Eskimos, and everything in the interior are Indians. And no, they're all natives. And it's like, really? And I said, how you deal? If somebody's out of Kotzebue, oh, you're dealing with those Eskimos. No, there's no such. And natives are telling me this. There's no difference between Indian and native. Yeah, well, I'll give you a few names, and you ask them, they'll tell you something a little different. It's like, really? So the used to be formerly known as Eskimos, and so how many adults do you have coming?
It fluctuates. I mean, between 5 to 10 from week to week.
How many kids?
Kids we have more. We have a kids ministry.
Come on.
So the kids ministry, we've had over 20 come. I mean, long stretches at a time, over 100 different kids come. 1 year. I mean, it's just we can get the kids out.
The native adults that you have coming through the kids.
Some of them they do. Yes. Mm-hmm.
There's a percentage there.
Yes.
And this is outstanding. People don't realize that. I had coming to a regular service for 8 years, working it for 8 years. We would have, you could reach out to kids and you could get yourself 50 kids if you wanted. You know how it is. Mm-hmm. And you can rally the troops. Adults, hard to come by, hard to come by. But as soon as they see the kids keep coming, and the parents will let the kids go as long as you leave them alone.
Yes, that is correct.
And see, I know this. I'm talking their language. They talk my language. And you try to bring the adults in on this. And if you have 5 or 10 that you can pick from, my village was under 250. And I probably had, for 8 years, 2 to 5. Mm-hmm. Percentage wise, I think that's about, and you got 5,000 sitting there, and you're doing 5 to 10. It's extremely good, extremely good, and it's a blessing because people don't realize what those. I have to be careful here because I'm going to go off my own bunny trail here, but people don't realize what those 5 to 10 people are, what pressure they're under.
That's right,
and we miss that. I mean, here in Fairbanks, they have an RU program, Reformers Anonymous, and just like an AA, but church based. And they can get away and get there and come to an RU program, or come to church and you just blend right in. It doesn't matter. Out in a village, if you're going to that church, everybody knows
exactly.
It. And people don't, it's like, why doesn't that person sober up? They want to sober up, but they won't let them. And I've watched that in the villages where they would come and drag the people from their homes and so you're going to, and make them drink with them. And they go drink. And it's just like, they're under so much pressure. Yes. And if they're coming to you, one family doesn't like the other family.
Yes, definitely.
And if they're coming to you, the other family just can't. They're isolated.
We've had that happen many times.
Yep. It's cliquish.
Very cliquish. For a while at our biggest, we had over 20, probably around 20 people coming, mostly adults. And then, there was a lot of people related to each other, and one got upset, and then they all left.
Yep. And it's funny, I can't go there because they go there. And they don't even go there anymore. It's like, I know exactly what you're
And then, to take it to, maybe you have to edit this later, but we've had people in church, and then a visitor comes, and it seems like, man, it's really good. They seem like we're clicking with them. But the problem is somebody else in church, maybe my wife can't be fill in the details here, but there was an affair previously in the villages, and there's a lot of immorality.
I'll help you out with that. Go ahead, keep going.
So then we had, then obviously the lady's not going to bring her husband back to the Baptist church, because there's a lady that had an affair with her husband, and it just, and then it's just sometimes that's hard, because then it's like, oh, that lady's a Baptist. She's not a Baptist, but she's coming to church, and of course we don't want to turn her away. So we got a lot of that, and we don't know a lot of times what's going on. We find out later on, oh, that's why that person got upset. That's why that person didn't come back. So there's a history in the town, between the people that we don't even know yet. Most of it, we get just little bits and pieces here and there.
I get the ones where that's my cousin. They're all cousins.
Yes,
They're
yes.
and so once they're coming, one family just doesn't like another, and you just deal with those conflicts. And it's tough, because whether you like it or not, you're going to wind up on one side or the other. Therein lies where I've seen it. I'll put this plug out there for everybody else, to everybody else. There were two missionaries behind me that came behind me that had a tremendous amount of inroad with the people I couldn't. And it was because they just would not have anything to do with me. They being the people, the natives, would not have anything to do with me, because I was friends and so-and-sos were coming to church. And so, I was the enemy. And I had done nothing wrong other than the fact that I've been there, that I'm there, and I'm friends with the wrong people, supposedly in their eye. But other missionaries that come along, all of a sudden they're dealing with those people that wouldn't have anything to do with me, and they isolate the other half. But, could you use some help?
Yes, we need the right kind of help.
Clarify that.
Well, we've actually had two other missionary families come to Greenland over the years. And it's just, you could just tell early on that their heart wasn't in it. I think a lot of it was the wife didn't want to be there in each case. But first of all, I hate that the wives always, they get blamed, because the flip side is my wife. She's an awesome wife, and that's why I've been able to make it so long.
No, you just know what to say. You trained them up well. Thank you. Good job. Thank you for going there, because there is a ton of truth right there. It's difficult on the wives.
Very, yeah.
We can put up with some stuff a little longer, but it's difficult on us. But ultimately it's difficult on the wives. The wives not only are dragged away from family, and it's hard for the wives because they have to watch their children growing up on that field and know it'll never be the way that they had envisioned it, getting married and raising the kids here in the U.S. or wherever they're from. So, and Carol's shaking her head, yes, yes. But that being said, as a church, being to reach out to the missionary wives, a missionary, it's never the man going to the field. That's all pretty. But you ain't going to be there if she ain't there.
Exactly.
and it's not your ministry. It's her ministry. And you can sit there and argue with me till you're blue in the face. And the ones that argue with me are the ones sitting back here as pastors and lay people in the church say, my wife's she's in submission. Well, good luck, buddy. Take her to the field. Let me know how that works out for you. And there's a lot of truth to that. That field is what your wife makes it. She stands behind you. You can go out there and boldly do what you need to do.
Amen.
But it's definitely helped me. Helped me. But I definitely appreciate the fact that you went there and point that fact out. And also the flip side of that, to the wives out there that are struggling, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. we'll sit there and encourage you enough. But I mean, even my wife made the call at one point. She says, the boys are at that age. It's time to we're going into town. Mm-hmm. She didn't say it. She says, we need to go into town. She would have done anything I asked her to, mm-hmm. but at that time she stood up enough and said, you know what, this is what I really think we should be doing. And God works through that stuff, and He does, mm-hmm. and He does. So you have 5 to 10, and you got a bunch of kids coming. God's blessed your ministry, and I also had the privileges of hearing about. You also have a ministry of going to, let me ask you this way. Where do you see the ministry going in the future?
Like I said earlier, it's taken longer than I thought. But we want to see a native trained, and we have a young man who's 23 years old, lives in another village, but he's saved, has a great testimony. And we're just really praying for him to maybe move to our town and be part of our ministry. But yeah, our desire is to go to other villages, try to start churches in these villages that are close to where we live now. So we'll start off maybe with first just visiting these villages with our boat, and then seeing what happens from there.
Boat, fill me in on the boat.
Well, we had a boat a few years ago. We were going to villages. We have 11 other villages just in our bay, which is not far, maybe 30 to 40 miles, the furthest village. We had a lot of mechanical problems, but Lord willing, we're going to have a new boat for next year.
A new boat? What are you looking at me like that for? Bring over another 1,000. Those boats are expensive.
Yes, they are.
So, and the only reason I lead into this is because I had the privilege of picking your brain on some of this, and I did it for a purpose. So you had a boat. How big a boat was it?
It was a 32-foot boat, 2 inboard, outboard motors. It was a good boat, but it was older than me.
Had trouble with maintenance and all that stuff.
Yes, a lot of issues.
But you would use that to go to where? Other villages?
Yeah, other villages.
And reach out?
Yep, reach out, give out gospel tracts. Just got started, really just got our feet wet, so to speak.
Wait a minute. There's no other missionaries. There's one other missionary. So you were going to villages that were in Greenland that never had a gospel?
Exactly, yep. So taking the gospel there, gospel tracts for the first time, just trying to reach out.
Wow. So you're blanking these other villages, but your boat was too old. Mm-hmm. And, I can pick on you in this because, here in Alaska, I'm going to get an airplane. I'm going to get my pilot's license. I'm going to fly to all these places. Yeah. $300 million later. It's like, really? What effect I used to travel around with people that had airplanes here in Alaska. We go into these little villages and stuff. It was effective for what it was. Mm-hmm. It left you yearning, put a burden in my heart. I mean, it had its place and stuff because you're just knocking on doors, talking to people, and they love to talk to you, and away you go, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So you gave them the gospel, and one side is like, well, if you're passing me, I could have just handed you the track in town and saved a whole lot of money. I'm glad God's not concerned with the money.
Amen.
And people don't realize if you see how much God throws at some of this stuff, it's like, really? So you had this boat, gave you troubles. Boat's no more,
right?
So
we learned a lot from the first boat, of course.
That's the way it goes.
Come on, we learned what we don't want in the next boat.
So you got one online?
Yeah. Well, we got one. We've been checking one out. There's a lot of the one we want. We've seen a lot of them in Greenland already, so we know it's a tested boat that works in Greenland.
Now you're saying a boat. Now, how big a boat?
It's going to be a 23-footer, so a lot smaller, not as wide, but it'll be easier to maneuver around the ice, easier to maneuver in the harbors. I feel wrong saying harbors. It's not really a harbor. A little dock.
Maneuvering around the ice and the harbors. Okay. So you can do this how many months out of the year?
Primarily 3 to 4 months from like June to September. We want it to be a summer ministry when there's 24 hours of sun, so we don't have to worry about.
People don't realize that when they don't understand unless you experience it. Mm-hmm. The sun never goes down.
Right.
Of course, in the wintertime, it never comes up. But they travel around, go on the boat. How much is your boat?
The one we're looking at is going to be about $120,000.
That's cheap. Sorry, that's me.
Our first boat was around $15,000. Of course, it was a used boat,
Right.
But then we had to ship it to Greenland, and we put so much into it. It just makes me sick, and I haven't really told churches about our new boat. I mean, I told them we want one, but I'm not telling them about how much. I'm just not saying anything because I wrote one pastor that gave us a lot of money, and I told him, I said, I feel embarrassed because of all the money that was, in my mind, was wasted. And he said, no, he said, these things happen in the ministry. He said, I'm a pastor and I've seen things like this happen. It's not your fault.
Amen.
And he said, we're giving money toward it.
Yes, pastor. Yes, pastor. I'll tell you what. Yeah, keep going.
So we already have. I need to look at my figures, but I think we already have 70,000 in a boat fund
that you have not advertised.
I have not advertised. No,
anything.
No.
You haven't gone begging for.
No, I haven't. We've actually from the very beginning we decided we didn't want to do that. And now people will tell me, even sometimes my pastor will tell me, if you don't put the need out there, but I do put the need out there. I just don't put a price tag on it. It's just God touches somebody's heart. The pastor will write me and say, hey, we know you're praying about a boat. How much? I let the pastors, let God move in their hearts if they want to give toward our ministries.
You hear that, missionary? That's what he's doing. He's leaving it up to the pastors. Oh no, we have to take control of this. That's a blessing there.
We do have a lot of good churches, though. I mean, we have like 15 to 20 churches that whenever there is a need, they're the same ones.
Step it.
So if every church, all our supporting churches, got on board land, we would have too much money. We'd have to give it back.
That's a good point. We can park there for a second because you look at those 15 to 20 churches that just have a heart for whatever you need and they step in there trying to fill it. It's an opportunity. That's what it is. A missionary is not a liability. A missionary is an opportunity. And you get a missionary comes along, it's like, here's a chance to be a blessing, to be blessed. Because God's going to bless you.
Amen.
God is definitely going to bless you. And boy, he has blessed you. If you're already at that point, how long have you been trying to raise money for?
Really, just been
no specifics.
Probably just a year and a half, really, if that, maybe a year, because we just sold our other boat. It's been a year now that we sold our old boat. So
you've been out of that ministry here for the past year.
Yeah, actually, it hasn't run. The boat hasn't been in the water visiting villages for several years. It's kind of been sad. It's been just,
need a church to shake loose with the rest of the coin that come over and help you deliver some gospel.
Yeah, amen.
It's just throwing that one out there.
We have a prison ministry. What else? What else is going on in Greenland? Of course, we already talked about the social problems, suicide.
So you have a prison ministry that you currently do. What do you do in the prisons?
Just go in there and hold a service, just like just like a Sunday service. It's more laid back. We'll sit around a table. I bring coffee, and actually my wife and daughters will make cookies, chocolate chip cookies, which we can't get them in Greenland. People send us chocolate chips. But so there's no searching. I just walk right in with all these a big basket of all these goodies, and they don't even check. But it is a real prison. There's murderers there. There's people that have committed real crimes.
But they're the ones primarily in Greenland.
Yes, these are all people in
so it's Greenland's own. So it wouldn't be necessarily out of that 5,000 of the city.
Right, they're from around
all over.
Yep, I've had inmates from north, from the east, and from the south. Some of them they speak a different dialect of Greenlandic.
I hear you.
But when they're released, of course, they're going back to their hometowns. So I try to give lots of gospel tracts out, give them a lot of literature. I print out a lot of literature, just try to load them up on literature.
Okay, before I run away on your prison ministry, chocolate chip cookies. and I only say that because you don't get chocolate chips over there.
No, can't.
And see, that's where they miss. So if somebody sends you stuff, you can get it through, the mail?
Yeah, through the mail, yes.
And just mail you stuff like that. But even something as simple as chocolate chips, I mean, they go a long ways. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to do. Is chocolate chips come from those 15 churches? Or do they just...
2 or 3 of them, right? I mean, yes.
So people know. So somebody is in tune with what you need to help you in your ministry. Are they asking you, or are you sharing it with them?
Oh, people will ask us first. They'll say, what can you use? What can we send you in a box? And then we tell them. And we hate asking for stuff. So sometimes, we kind of in our minds, like we want stuff that we can use for the ministry, but then people say, no, what's some stuff for you and your kids? So then we'll give out a little longer list.
2 sides of this coin. Churches reaching out to missionaries. You don't have that. It's going by the wayside. You want to be a blessing? You ask that missionary, what do you need? Nobody wants to ask a missionary that question. $120,000 boat. Oh, that's nice. And maybe it needs to be worded differently. You know, a lot of times you see youth groups and stuff because they'll have young kids, because that way, you know, they won't tell the kids they need a $120,000 boat. They'll tell them they need chocolate chips. And but individuals reaching out, church members reaching out. Is it church members, or are they reaching out as members or as church? And I'm only asking this because we got a whole lot of people that have a whole lot of missionaries that have very little contact.
It's really both.
It is both. Okay. 16 years you've been at it. Or 18 years you've been at it, and you get individuals and churches that reach out. You want to keep your people, I'm speaking to churches here, Pastor, listen, you want to keep your people engaged in church, get them involved in the missionary's life, praying for them, sending them something. So your prison ministry, you take chocolate chip cookies that help out in the prison ministry. From those chocolate chips, people have heard the gospel.
Yes.
And to say that one more time, from the chocolate chips, people have heard the gospel.
Yes.
And it sounds so insignificant, but it's the point I'm trying to make here in the J&J podcast is that it's that if you in the pew get involved in a missionary's life, you don't realize what benefit the blessings that's hidden right around a corner from you. And so you're able to reach different people within the prison ministry just by showing up there.
Yes. And of course, that's one of the things with the snack is I can tell the ones that may not be interested in coming to the service. I tell them, if you want a snack, you're going to have to come and listen to the preaching.
There's a lot to that. When you're in jail, that's really, you got what? I'll be there. Oh, and Jesus too, huh? But let me try to wrap on this subject here, which I should have jumped on it sooner, because it's a tough one even for me. Is the suicide rate within Greenland pretty high?
They say it's the highest suicide rate in the world. Now, several years ago, in 2007, actually, in a village located in the east coast of Greenland. It's just one of the worst places. I mean, as far as the alcohol and the suicides, in one night, 12 people committed suicide, and it wasn't even planned, or it wasn't a mass suicide. It was just 12 people over that night in a village of 2,000 people. 12 people in one night just decided to take their lives. And so, I mean, that's just unheard of. I mean, it's just incredible that many people would just want to end their lives.
I can relate to that because the Yukon River in Alaska has the highest suicide rate within the state of Alaska. The state of Alaska has the highest suicide rate within all the United States.
Wow.
And so on that Yukon River where we were, and I didn't know that. I've said it before on podcasts, but Debbie, my wife, and I, we, at the end of the 8 years, we were counting, I think we were at 22 or 23 people that we knew from either that town or somewhere on that river were associated in one way or another, had committed suicide. And the problem is it becomes an acceptable practice.
That's right.
And we don't realize that. It's an acceptable practice. I know in Alaska here, we have the challenges, especially with downriver where I was at. They would honor and lift up a person who committed suicide, you know, in loving memory of.
Right.
And we'll do this. And they perform rituals and stuff in honor of those people. And it's a shame because traditionally that's how they do it. And they couldn't break that, even though they're smart enough to realize, you know, we lifting these people up, they committed suicide. And it was almost like, and I venture out because you're trying to rationalize that train of thought that would lead somebody to do that. It's the alcohol, it's the drugs, and we say all that. But in reality, I think it's loneliness because you didn't, they watch people being lifted up and honored in their death. You don't love me while I was living, but you sure will after I'm dead.
Exactly.
And that's a thought that's in the back of their head that somehow at that point I would assume takes the forefront of their thought. I just rambling on here because I still end up with people I know.
Yeah.
Boom. Boom.
That's the hardest thing. I mean, we've had several neighbors, several inmates after they were released, just so many people in town. And, sometimes, we're thinking, did we do enough to try to reach them before they got to this point? What could we have done different?
That hurts. It does, because you sit there saying, had I, and, family members are going through the same thing. Had I, had he, I had an individual who was, if they're talking about it, usually it's not going to happen to a point, unless you throw alcohol or some other,
right,
or situational driven. You get to that point, call me. You call me anytime. You can always talk to me. And then when they didn't reach out, was I available? Did he try to? Why didn't he? Why couldn't I? One more. And you deal with that's tough on a missionary. That's tough on a missionary. Missionaries' wives. It runs right over top of you, because it's like it's harder for us because we have the answer.
Exactly.
And it's like I should have. If I was only doing something, I could have. And it's tough on a relationship, husband-wife relationship too, because. You sit there saying, well, if we were doing this or we were doing this, it's the hardest thing to deal with. And you notice it's selfish.
Yes.
It's selfish because here we are talking about something they did and how and what they did is affecting us, and I don't know, preachers, everybody listening to the podcast, just bear with us because we're going through therapy here. Him and I, Chris and I, are talking to each other and this stuff, because it's a struggle we deal with, that we've had to deal with, and he's currently dealing with, and there is no answers.
Right.
I don't care how we have the answer, but
getting that answer to them
is the challenge.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because it was a battle I was not ready to fight. Yeah, when I went there, it was tough because I didn't realize how high the suicide rate was, or how it impacted. Next thing I know, it's like boom, 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 and you're like, what is going on here? And that's me. Sorry, just rambling on. And I'm sure you have to be struggling. I mean, when you start stacking them up, when they start dropping like that, it's like, wow, what more can I do? What more can I do? What more can I do? And I don't know if there is an answer. I mean, I got to be careful on that. Yes, God is the answer. But I think it's something like dealing with cancer, having never had to do it. It would be, God, give me the strength. Give me the wisdom. To deal with the whole thing, sure. But there's a lot of people from that are hurting. The part that hurt the most was when they would look at you, family members, somebody committed suicide, and they looked to you for the answer. And I was sharing this with O'Brien because he had the same problem with people that losing them in the war over there, is when they give you that look. You know the look. The look is when they turn to you and they realize for the first time you don't have that magic wand to go poof and make all their problems go away. But you do, and they can't get it. And that look they give you, like, yeah, and they'll just move on with their life and stuff and trying to share. I'm sorry. I just thought sharing it. That's what's brutal. That's what's tough. But in the midst of all that, it's interesting to see how God is blessed. I got people dealing with family and friends that have dealt with that suicide, that now a lot of those doors open. They don't open then. They open later.
Yes.
And I see that. That's what's been a blessing, is through those suicides. I can point to 4 specific ones where God has used that suicide of family members or spouses to finally open their eyes to get that have opened up a door for me to either witness to them and stuff.
Yes.
But it's years after the fact. Years after. Well, Shoal family, it's a blessing. I thank you very much for taking the opportunity. Is there anything else we need to touch on?
No.
I think it's been a very informative podcast. We'll definitely have to sort this thing out. But it's been a blessing. I thank you for sharing those things
It's been
with us.
Been an honor and a privilege to be here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll definitely be praying for you. And we have your contact information if somebody wants to reach out and speak with you. And look forward to hearing and seeing what God's going to do with you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. This podcast is for preachers, missionaries, and laymen. If you wish to contact us, you can reach us at jjpodcast.com or email us at info@jjpodcast.com. If you're a current missionary on the field or on deputation and have something you can share with us, please feel free to reach out to us. If you're a pastor and have some insight that you can share with these missionaries to help them, please feel free to reach out to us. If you're in the pew and have a subject you would like to have discussed, please feel free to email us at info@jjpodcast.com. That's info@jjpodcast.com.